Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this one I'm going to be looking at the difference in glyph drops from glyph dungeons level 9 and 10. All the runs I've done for this experiment have been in the Wrath dungeon, because I know a lot of players get to that stage where they can do Wrath 9 fairly quickly and comfortably, but Wrath 10 is a bit of a struggle. So this will just basically hopefully give you an idea on what to prioritize, whether to really push hard to get to that 10 or whether just to do the fast, easy runs at level 9. I'll start out with Wrath 9. So I've done 100 runs of each Wrath 9 and Wrath 10 and taken photos of every glyph I got for those 200 runs. So from 9, I was very disappointed early. I'd only had one purple when I was up to about 70 runs, and in the end I got 2 more, so I ended up with 3 purple glyphs. The majority on Wrath 9 was green with a total of 57, and then the yellows had 40. So majority's green, next largest by far is 40, and then purple's just dwarfed with only 3 purple drops. I also did added up all the amount of substats that each glyph had. This was a bit tricky because on substats you might have just 2 different substats, but one of them might have had 2 roles in it. So I went through all the glyphs and tried to get as close as I could without taking hours, and the results I came up with for Wrath 9 were that one substat, I didn't get any with only one substat. There was a couple that had only one individual stat, but it had 2 roles into it. So 2 substats was 11, 3 substats was 80, 4 substats was 7, and 5 subs was only 2. So a very large majority of them just had 3 substats in 80 of them. And the final thing I looked at, I could have analysed everything between what slot they were, what type of glyph they were, whether they were HP, defense, and so on and so forth, but it would just get too complicated. So the last thing that I looked at was the amount of times I got the stones drop. So sometimes you'll get 10 fragments drop, and that occurred 4 times for me in the 100 runs on Wrath 9. Moving into Wrath 10, this was a lot more promising. This was more along the lines of what I thought Wrath 10 drops would be. Wrath 9 was a little bit light on. Also, another thing to remember is that this is a very small sample size, so this doesn't exactly represent what the actual drop rates are. This is just what I found from my 100 drops. The rates could be higher or lower, but this just gives you a ballpark figure on what I was working with. So Wrath 10, purples was 12, which I thought was very decent, up around that 10% drop rate is what I'd assumed it would have been, so I was happy with that. And then the other thing I was happy with, it was only 32% were green, so it was a very small portion, or larger than the purple, but for what I considered, I thought that the greens were a small portion of it, and then yellows were 56, which was the largest portion. So, and the other thing I looked at, which was the number of substats, once again had 0 with 1 substat, only had 2 with 5 substats, 60 with 3 substats, and then a very large, what I considered was a large number, was 33 of those glyphs had 4 substats, which I thought was better than I thought. I thought a large majority was going to be 3 substats again. And then the final one was the Soulstone fragments, and they dropped 9 times out of the 100 runs for me on Wrath 10. So when we compare the two side by side, we see that, in my opinion, Wrath 10 is far better. Even if you're doing the faster runs on level 9, it's just not quite worth it. I understand that it took me 3 weeks of farming level 9 before I could do level 10, so farming level 9 where you have to isn't an issue. It is what it is. It's a stepping stone, so you've got to farm it, get those yellows, the odd purple, and then just upgrade them, farm your crystals so that you can upgrade those glyphs and eventually move into 10. But once you get into 10, the drop rates are much more generous. With that 12 versus 3, you're getting 4 times as many purples for your effort and a lot more yellows compared to greens, so that's definitely way better. And then even when you look at the substats, just having that extra 26% off of my run of 4 substats is massive. I know substats people don't think are as important as the color of the glyph, but if I have a yellow glyph that has 4 or 5 substats, it's often going to be actually better than a purple glyph with 2 or 3 substats. So substats are a big thing, and that's where I think these runs in level 10 are just much more rewarding. And then also for the final thing, which was only small, the amount of soulstone fragments, it's over double, but it's not what you run the glyph dungeons for. It's just an added bonus, and I thought that was just something else interesting to throw into the mix. So I hope this has helped you a little bit. Like I said, again, it is just a small sample size, but it gives a rough idea of the sort of drop rates you get and what you'd prefer to be farming. Like I said, definitely I'd be aiming for that 10 if you can do it. If your 10 is failing a bit, maybe drop back to 9, farm up some extra crystals, get some more yellows and upgrade those glyphs, and then move back into 10. But 10 is by far the better drops. Once again, I hope this helped, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, guys.